Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Scott Allen Miller, this is Sam IT, and today I'm going to ask the question, do you really need Active Directory? After years in IT, back in the mid to late 1990s, it was just beginning to be popular to see things like eDirectory and Microsoft's directory services starting to take off, and they started to become very popular. By 2000, Active Directory was introduced, and since that time, starting about in 2003, there seems to be a trend where people not only think that it's a cool product with some good opportunity to be useful, but it started to become a foregone conclusion that Active Directory was absolutely critical and necessary, and you could not live without it. Which is strange, because those of us who came from before AD being popular, we did just fine without it. It is a very cool product with a lot to offer, but do you need it in your organization? This is a question that I ask everyone to ask themselves. Of course, if you're in a Fortune 100 and you have 100,000 users and you've got AD deeply entrenched, you're not going to just pull it out on a whim. I'm not suggesting anything of the sort. But I see this question get asked an awful lot, especially as companies begin to make the transition from a LAN-based architecture to hosted services and reconsidering how their applications are handled. One of the things that comes up very quickly is, how does AD play into this new infrastructure as they start moving things out to other hosted methodologies, right? If your CRM is hosted by one vendor and your email is hosted by another, are they tied together with AD? And even if they are, is it worth it? Where is your AD coming into play? It's important to understand that Active Directory's key value, now it has a lot of things it can do, but its key value is making it easy to handle the concept of mapped drives internal to your organization and to allow easy mobility between workstations by users because the passwords are across the entire organization. These things are very handy, but they pretty much depend on people sharing workstations and people needing to use things like SMB-based mapped drives in a traditional LAN-based architecture. I mean, if you don't have those things, then Active Directory doesn't really provide a very special service for you in most cases. You may have things that have tied to it, but there are often things that could be decoupled from it if you were to look into them. It depends on your organization. Of course, your mileage will vary, but for the average small organization, AD is really centered around mapped drives, and the concept of mapped drives is already a pretty strongly legacy one that is, again, deeply entrenched in the average organization. So I'm not suggesting that you simply snap your fingers and walk away from all these things that depend on AD, and then AD will simply go away because the whole house of cards disappears. It's not like that, but you may, as you begin to look at your organization, realize that you have a number of services that are circularly dependent, and that you're using AD because you have mapped drives. You're using mapped drives since you already have AD. Pretty soon you have all this licensing and complexity, and you need to have VPNs and extend your LAN because all of these things are LAN dependent, and you can't go hosted because you're doing all these things that are inherently not flexible, and now you can't have people work from home or your other branch offices are really complex. But if we eliminated AD and we eliminated mapped drives and we moved to more modern sync mechanisms, which don't work for everyone, and we move to different authentications, which again don't work for everyone, but if you did, suddenly things like working from home and branch offices just start working, and there's no need for any thought to make them work at all in many cases. And a lot of things like, why do we have AD, suddenly become, I have no idea, it doesn't seem to do anything in our organization. A lot of drivers behind AD is that a lot of myths have become attached to it, and people believe that it does a lot of things that it doesn't. Now, we're going to tackle that in another video that I'll be releasing shortly, but there's every possibility that your organization may be able to live without Active Directory. And it's at least worth asking the question and looking through how your business works to see if it makes sense for you. I have worked in companies with hundreds or thousands of employees who never even gave AD a second thought. They don't deploy it at all, and it causes no problems. There's no need for it. I've also worked in very large organizations that use it heavily. It all depends on how you work, what your workloads are, what is already entrenched, and what you're trying to do. But it is completely legitimate to question AD. There is no reason that it should be a foregone conclusion, and in reality, if you're a new business or working from a green field in any way, you should almost certainly not entertain Active Directory or any LAN-based system like that, and suddenly things like map drives and Active Directory and VPNs and all this really heavy complexity that has made IT management in small shops very difficult for a very long time may evaporate altogether, leaving you with a very simple, much more robust infrastructure that allows you to be far more flexible and more cost effective. Thanks for joining me. Remember to like and subscribe, and as always, you can sponsor us on Patreon, and you can also go in the comments below and ask questions about perhaps your Active Directory environment, what some alternatives are, what kind of things you may want to consider, and so forth. Thanks for joining me. This episode of Sam IT has been sponsored by our friends at Talkadillo, the affordable, simple, fully managed, predictably priced VoIP PBX platform. Learn more at talkadillo.com and help to support Sam IT.